open space of robot framework community. So my name is Mikka Solmela. I'm the executive director here at the Robot Framework Foundation. I'm still expecting a community leader, Ed Manlove, to join to show the community survey results, but I think we can get started. Hopefully he will also join us with his insight. The main idea is that in January, February this year, 2024, we gathered an annual community survey. It was the second of our community. The main idea there is to gather feedback on the tool usage, the community itself, the ecosystem of Robot Framework, the foundation, and other things related. Today we'll go through the main results. I would also say that anybody who wants is there somebody who had a question, or is somebody who is not muted?
Was just unmuted.
Okay. Yeah. I also see Ed here. So welcome, Ed. Ed Manuel is one of our community leaders. Do you want to say hi to the crowd, Ed?
Hello. Welcome.
Perfect. So today, the agenda, of course, is the community survey. I will have a kind of a quite quick walkthrough. There are a lot of questions. I try to highlight some important parts. We can also stop and have a little bit discussion whenever needed. So raise your hand or just shout out if you have questions or you want to kind of look deeper into some of the results. And also Ed is here to support me, so he will also raise some important questions and topics there from the survey. So I will be more like a let's walk this through, and Ed will then put the break when needed. So, or one of you who there in the audience. So let's get started. Just a moment, I will share my screen. So first, some background. I guess the executive summary here is quite good. So the main thing is that it was in February. We had 152 responses, which of course is something. It's super hard to know the actual user base of Robot Framework. So that can be hundreds of thousands, it can be millions, but we can say that if it's something like 1 million users altogether, it would be roughly something like a 95% confidence level on that response rate. Of course, this is impossible to know really. So some heuristics there. So as key insight, users prizes Robot Framework for its flexibility. It's a library support and user-friendly syntax, facilitating both testing and RPA. Some kind of enhancements were expanding testing capabilities, any improvements in usability and UI. I think that's kind of very short summary. For community participation, people really like the friendly and supportive community and feedback and learning opportunities there. For foundation, we still need to work on our kind of knowledgement. So people out there are not that knowledgeable about what the foundation does, and maybe this is also a good opportunity to tell everybody that the Robot Framework Foundation is here to support Robot Framework tool, community, and the ecosystem around Robot Framework. We're a non-profit organization, and our main task is to maintain all of the above mentioned. So some recommendations based on kind of the survey, and I must say a friendly warning at this point. There was quite a lot of data. I did use in some parts use of ChatGPT to try to find trends and so forth. Also, the report is written mainly with that due to the fact that it's quite good in languages. So not everything should be taken as is due to that, and due to the fact that even with 52 respondents, we are not actually sure how well that represents the whole community. But we should still have kind of a more outreach to get more inclusive community, although we are quite inclusive already as is. We could still focus a little bit more on some usability and integrations. Some more support and learning contribution could be still done. So addressing there are some gaps that can be, for example, in the guides and so forth. And the foundation should boost visibility overall. Still a little bit of background. So there were like altogether 6 sections there in the survey, focusing a little bit different areas. So background information, robot framework tool and ecosystem, participation within the community, robot framework foundation, and then we had a divide there depending on what you answered, if you are a member or if you are not a member. So let's move forward. I think this is quite small for you. Can somebody indicate, can you see anything, or should I just straight out?
It's a
Zoom in.
little small. If you could zoom in a little bit, Mikka. And one other point that I'll add in that we didn't note in the introduction was that this is actually the second year the survey has been done. So we'll start to see kind of a comparison about last year and this year over the entire time. But this is the kind of the second year that we've run this annually.
That is absolutely correct. Just mentioned there in the chat a little hard to read. Should I still zoom in? Because there's also a little bit kind of a...
Yes, if you could, a little bit more.
Still?
One more.
Because then we start missing the data, I think. I think that's one too many. Just a moment. I will jump back in here. I think one we can do. And now, okay. So let's start. Like I said, I will be running this through, but feel free to interrupt me at any point of time. And it will be also here kind of raising good topics and questions for discussion or further remarks. But mainly we had quite male heavy results or participants in the survey as last year.
Mikka, just one short notice. Can you maybe press F11 to go into full screen mode? It's also then better on the recording afterwards.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, it's much better. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. So the experience here is a little bit split. So we have some really experienced user, like 26% more than 10 years. Then again, some 17% are just 1 to 3 years in, and some 7% less than a year. And most people there then kind of in between those two. For kind of so just in a field of testing or RPA, but then as a robot framework user, of course that's a little bit less, but more or less kind of still aligning in a similar pattern that some people a little bit less. So 7% have 10 or plus years. So of course, as you know, robot framework has been open source 2015. So probably those are years people who have been in the Nokia times using it. Anyway, 2008 has been open source. But anyway, some still really old timers, but also some beginners there with 17% less than a year, and most people in between. So fairly similar pattern as the year before. And quite many people in the past 6 months use it daily, almost every day. Some people a little bit fewer for their work. Then there are some people using it for hobby or other purposes. So most people are here on a work basis. Then the roles are quite test heavy. So biggest roles being test automation engineer and then QA engineer. There are a few RPA people here, but you can think of like 85% of people are quite in the testing field of the respondees. And that's fairly similar to last year. I think this is actually smoother this way. Okay, so if we think about the companies behind those people, so quite many people use it for testing, like 93%. And what is interesting is that still more people combined. So many of those companies using it for testing use it also for automation in general or RPA. So of course, if you have good tool for one thing, you can use it for other things. Some people use it internally as well. Some people, like 10%, use it part of their own tool. So, and of course, there are consultancy companies, so roughly 27% use it for kind of with the client projects. And I think it's a fairly similar pattern from last year, so no big difference there. Then there are some few new background questions. So did you participate in the survey last year? I think this is actually quite interesting that 70% roughly did not participate. So if we compare it year on year, those are actually mainly different people. So that's also something that should be noted. Also, roughly 70% of people have some role in the decision making of the tools within their organization. So I think that's a good indication that kind of robot framework can be utilized as a main tool if they're active in our community.
And Mikka, I'll just a quick interjection here, because we send this out biannually. You know, I know that question about did you fill out the survey last year was one of the 3 topics that really stood out to me in this year's results. So I'll just do a whole year reminder ahead of time. Look for this survey again next year around Robocon. So yeah. January, February timeframe of 2025. We do, greatly appreciate everybody taking the time to fill out the survey, because this really helps us understand a lot of things, and we'll see those here. So.
Yeah, I actually thanks for bringing that up, and thank you everybody who has taken the survey or participated in the community in other ways. This is super vital to get feedback on Robot Framework and the community, and we really try to also use the information we get to leverage us further. So it's super important, and like Ed said, expect another survey somewhere around next Robocon in February or so. So moving forward, how relevant is Robot Framework for your daily work? So roughly 70% think it's super relevant, and then some 18% think it's maybe not the most relevant thing, but still highly relevant. There is some tail there, but it gives a quite good indication that people answering the survey think it's relevant for them. Then a little bit of what functionality this feature brings most value. You can quite easily see libraries are there, automation integrations, easy to use, I guess, this thing there, keywords, mobile, web, report, applications, readability. So some of the things to highlight. As a summary, so this again with a pinch of salt, but with all of the survey results, but maybe even here more. But flexibility and library support is something that is really liked. Then user accessibility and collaboration. So this kind of you enhance usability and readability with the keyword-driven nature, and welcoming users with limited programming expertise for teamwork. So not everybody can code. Comprehensive reporting. So those reports and logs are seen quite essential. Then versatility in testing. So of course, different scenarios, whether UI, API, database, all of those kind of possibilities there within the tool. Community support and documentation are seen as a good good vital thing, and of course the thing beyond testing, so automation, RPA, protocol testing, and those kind of more niche areas that robot framework can be utilized as well. And please do ask questions if anybody has any. Then going forward with the how strongly do you agree or disagree or kind of following statements on robot framework? And those are super small, so those actually here below written. So that's the first one, and second, and so forth. So vast majority things like almost 50% that it's easy to use or super easy to use, similar pattern as last year. Also, most people, so the neutral here is green. Most people agree that it's allows complex tasks to be solved easily. Similar pattern as last year. And most people here a little bit more on the neutral and kind of unsure as well that the current development of the core is heading to the right direction. So not everybody follows where the core is heading or knows where it's heading, but still the majority thinks it's a good direction, agree with that, or strongly agree. Then the robot framework is moving more towards programming language syntax. And here we see a small difference between the years, not a huge one, but still there are a few people like strongly agreeing there that it is kind of not moving there. As in last year, nobody was disagreeing, but still kind of fairly similar shape. And then the last question here being, it should move more towards programming language syntax. So the difference between this and the last question is that how you feel it is kind of moving, or de facto how it's moving. So versus kind of where do you want it to go. So most people actually still agree that it should kind of move a little bit more towards programming language syntax, but there's a big chunk of neutral people here, and even quite big chunk of people kind of saying that it actually should not move more towards that. So we are seeing a bit more Gaussian trend here compared to last year. So I would say a bit more uneven, versus last year it was still quite heavy on a kind of like, yes, we should go there. So
And Mikka, here's can I interject here and talk a little bit about this question? So this is an area where, I want to walk it through those five, at least maybe four of the five questions again. But I really would like to see, people from the community kind of maybe starting to describe some more to this topic and talk about this topic. It essentially, if you look at the questions there on the bottom, it starts off with, is robot framework easy to use? And as we see in the survey results, and I think a lot of our own intuition and experience, those of us who've been using it for a long time, think that this is something that people talk a lot about. It is very easy to use. And then the questions kind of go to, switching that around. So the first one, is it easy to use? The second one, and this is a topic that I've heard kind of, various responses on, is, does it allow complex tasks to be solved easily? So, the question of easy things are easy to do, but are the complex things easy to do? And what I see when I look at this survey, and we've had some discussions on this, is that I see a shift. I kind of personally, I see kind of a shift from a really strong, yes, it's easy to use, but as we ask these questions, does it make it, how about the complex things? Are those easy to do? And then one of the things, and I'm actually implying this here in the way I think about these questions and kind of the way I ask these questions, is it easy to use? And then that last two parts of it, programming language versus kind of this natural language syntax, is that, that's, I think, one of the things when I talk about robot framework, why I think it's easy to use is there's that natural language free syntax. I might be, and I'll note here, I think I've been heavily involved in this question, and I've been a bit biased in myself. And so I think I'm really trying to remove my bias out of this question, but still ask this question of the community. And I would be interested in hearing, more people write words to this instead of saying agree or disagree. And I'm not saying we're going to change the survey. I think we're pretty confident we want to keep the survey as it is so we can see year-over-year results. It also makes it very complex. Creating a survey is a complicated thing, and we want to have people be able to answer it in a short amount of time. But I think this area is something that, as a community, I would be interested in hearing people kind of have dialogues more about and talk more around these questions. We'll see, and I'll leave this as a last note, that center question is the current development on the course heading in the right direction. I think we get a pretty strong agreement there. There's some kind of unknown. But we had another question that was new this year that's going to kind of come up that I don't think kind of answers any questions, but it actually is interesting in the terms of feedback. So I'll let you go ahead, Mikka, and I'll kind of highlight that when we get there. I think it's a couple more questions down, but it's another part that kind of stood out to me this year over previous years. So
yeah, thanks, Ed. Yeah, go ahead, Rene. You had a thought?
Maybe one comment on that. I do agree with this. It's not just like, is it going to programming languages? Oh, then it will be harder to use. And so this movement that we implement more and more programming features like if or loops or stuff like that helps actually, in my opinion, the ease of use. Of course, it's more stuff, more possibilities to learn. But on the other hand, I know a lot of tools where a little bit more complex tasks are getting suddenly super hard to implement. And if we're enabling a greater feature set, it can help the ease of use in real life situations. And I had another tool lately, which I was testing with a customer, which is super visual, and you're just connecting boxes. But once you start, for example, iterating over a list or so, it's kind of impossible to implement with that. And you're stuck, so you cannot solve it. And then the ease of use does not help you at all if the solution is not achievable. And I think it's a good point to discuss this, moving in the right direction. How can we improve the ease of use while also improving the usability and the user experience for real life issues?
Yeah, Pekka?
I have also one comment. First of all, I agree with Rene that we've added those features for a reason. Big part of the reason was the moving more to the RPA field, where these features are more relevant than in test automation. But another reason was that people were needing this kind of functionality, and then they were using kind of more hacky solutions to get the same things done. But kind of the more relevant thing that I want to mention is that we aren't at the moment planning to add any more programmatic features, which doesn't mean that we couldn't add them, but at the moment there are no ideas even for anything. We've added the basic looping structures and exception handling and conditional logic, which is kind of a basic building blocks with programming languages. And then because plan is not to make robot framework as powerful, for example, like Python, because, well, if you need that power, you do write libraries in Python. But I don't see anything. I have some ideas that we may add at some point, but like there's nothing at the moment that the community in large would be discussing that this would be useful, and we need to debate about that. That said, I think
you could argue that typing in resource files would be a kind of programming features, but on the other hand, it's a solution that's already there, and we just expand it.
Kind of. But it's even more like optional than using if and so on. Of course, another thing, of course, is that these features are something that we haven't changed anything that worked earlier. So you can just totally ignore them if you want. And I would assume that even with Robocop, you could create linter rules that prohibit using these programmatic features if you really insist. But anyway, it's a very interesting topic, and but definitely a good question to survey and something to keep eye on and discuss with the community.
Yeah, thanks, Pekka, as well. Let's continue to the next question. So, what functionalities features should be further developed within the Robot Framework core? There's a short summary here. So again, take a little bit pinch of salt there, but integration and accessibility with libraries. So this is actually something that I think is kind of already there, but of course I'm not the expert here, so maybe somebody can tell me that if the integration with Python is difficult. But I think it's more about libraries and kind of tools, existing tools within the Python ecosystem or existing tools within other ecosystems. But anyway, I guess everything's easy if you know how to do it, and if you don't, then it's difficult. Some programming features and syntax. So people do appreciate the programming language features. Some like inline keywords and decorators would be nice enhancements. There is no kind of consensus on, or there is a consensus on maintaining the simplicity and readability of Robot Framework and keep it accessible with users with varying coding skills. So I think it's just about this balancing act, like Pekka mentioned and Rene mentioned there. Testing capabilities, expansion. So many responses indicate the need to expanded testing capabilities, including better support for complex scenarios, non-web apps, graphical components, mobile automation. I think this again, because those are user feedback. So some of them have different issues than some other respondees. Some built-in metrics would be nice, and some people require some PDD outline scenarios and so forth. Usability and UI enhancements. So there's a suggestion to include improvement reporting, which we are actually on the way of doing, such as inclusion of charts and reports, better test management tools, web GUI, and managing test suites. There are also calls for feature like expected failure. I don't know, maybe Pekka can comment on that later, but or somebody else. Markets and easy updates between versions. I don't know if that can be implemented in practice, but there is a hope for that. Integration with development tools. A notable number of responses focus on better integration with test management tools, IDEs, device farms, continuous integration pipelines. Also, kind of a desire for more powerful PyCharm plugin, seamless integration with Azure DevOps, and support for Java TypeScript. So those kind of needs arose. Performance and scalability. So requests for features that enhance performance, reduce resource usage, and support parallelization and testing in cloud environments. So kind of a scaling issues for some people. Innovation and future proofing. So including AI functionality, secure testing, chaos testing, better support for Python 3 features. Again, this was done in February. So some of this can be a little bit old. We, for example, now have a first Robot Framework AI library, which is called Robot Framework AI. So you can check it out from the Market Square.
Yeah. And Mikka, this was actually, if I can jump in again, this actually was the question I was looking for. And it was, this was, if I'm not mistaken, we newly asked this question this year. I almost want to talk about it more generally, because the question was really, what features in the core do you want to see improved upon? And I think, that gets into kind of a difficult question, because there's also kind of the core in the ecosystem. I'll highlight, because it popped out to me and it pops out later on in number 3. Somebody mentions like mobile app automation, which is something we're working on in general, but we also see it in the ecosystem question. But really, I think for me, what I really like about this question and really took in from it was the amount of feedback. I almost don't want to, there's a lot of different things in here, and we could talk about whether it really fits into the core or the ecosystem. And I'm less concerned about that, but I'm very excited to see this feedback. And what I would say is, as a library developer, so I work on a few different libraries. The Selenium library on one hand, which is a long time library. So, we've got working on both future enhancements, but also trying to keep the very large user base functioning with it. So we're kind of looking at that. But then we also have other libraries that I maintain. We've been talking about the Faker library, which, there's some things we just want to kind of redo and change in that, and really change that a great deal. But the idea of having a small group of people kind of maintain a project without the feedback from the community is tough. We might think this is the right idea, but getting that feedback in from the community about what things you'd like to see change is super important. And I think overall, kind of going back to this survey will come out again in February, but we also have other communication channels. We're constantly listening, and I think having that communication is really important. So I think having people, share feedback and participate in the community is very helpful. So just wanted to highlight that here.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I can relate and agree with that a lot. Moving forward, so we are considering deprecating the pipe.
Did you want some comments from me about those? Because
well, you can if you have something you want to share, not a must, but up to you.
Well, there was a lot of those requests were actually more about the ecosystem and stuff that should be an enhancement to existing tools, so maybe better new tools. Of course, performance and stuff like that is something that is in the core, and for example, with IDE support that also just mentioned there. Although it's mostly outside the core, we are adding new APIs to help there when IDE plugin developers are contacting us and proposing enhancements and so on. But yeah, I think it's mostly those. Need to look at this a bit more closely to see is there something special that we should actually take a look at in the actual core. One thing I wanted to actually mention, I kind of need to take my earlier word back a bit. I said there are no syntactic features we are planning at the moment. One was actually mentioned here is this inline keyword call functionality, which would be a programmatic feature. We've been discussing about that for, I don't know, half a decade at least. And it hasn't been added because we haven't yet agreed fully with the syntax. And this is kind of means that, well, we are planning to add some programmatic features still in the future, but also want to underline that we are not doing it lightly. We want to be sure that when we add something that it actually makes sense, and it makes it kind of that the syntax makes sense, makes it solve some concrete use cases and so on. So yeah, that's something that may be added, but we absolutely need to have more discussion about the syntax and so on. And I don't consider it super critical at the moment, but maybe when we'll start looking at Robot Framework 8, we can again discuss that. Is this something we want to do? Do we want to give another try to agree on a syntax and so on?
Yeah, thanks. So the next question being depreciation of pipe separate format, and 95% roughly say that no issue at all. Few people were a little bit kind of concerned, mainly kind of regarding backward compatibility and then the required effort of refactoring existing code. Well, I guess that's something to think of.
This is something that I would actually, again, interrupt. The reason why we are thinking about that, so deprecating the pipe separated syntax, which is something that not everybody even know that there exists something like that. But typically in Robot Framework data, you separate keywords and arguments, so on with spaces, so that there's two or more spaces, and that's separated. But alternatively, is that you can use the pipe character surrounded by spaces for that purpose. And it's actually something you can use with every file. And even in the same file, you can mix and mix it freely, because it's checked by the parser that if a line starts with the pipe character and followed by a space, then it expects pipe to be a separator. If it's not, then it expects spaces to be a separator. So this is a feature that works. It has some nice kind of, it can make the data cleaner in some cases, but the reason why we are thinking that we may want to remove it is that it increased the complexity of the parser quite a bit. Obviously, it doesn't matter with the current robot framework parser because it's there already. The complexity has been tackled and we've implemented it. But it has turned out that it would be very useful to have parsers for robot framework data implemented in some other languages than in Python, and having other implementations the current one, for various reasons. One would be that if you, for example, we could implement the parser using something like Rust or Go, you could seamlessly integrate it with Python, so the users wouldn't see a thing, except that the parser would be like 3 orders of magnitude faster. Performance was mentioned there, so that would be quite a big saving when you are starting bigger executions, that the execution will start basically immediately because parsing would take like milliseconds instead of seconds or something. The normal parser is relatively fast, so it's not a huge problem at the moment, especially if your execution takes anyway hours or I don't know, 15 minutes, and it doesn't really matter. Does it take matter that does the parsing the data take 5 seconds or something? But anyway, it would be nice, and it would also, IDEs were mentioned. I think there it would help even more when opening a bigger project for IDEs. If they could use that backend, that would be very helpful. And the other thing would be that somehow C-based parser using, well, this is getting a bit technical, but the three-seater, I guess framework would be the best word to say it, but using that would allow syntax highlighting in much more systems automatically. If we would implement the three-seater based parser for robot framework, then robot framework data would be highlighted correctly in many more different places. And for example, implementing current parser in C is something that I wouldn't like to do at all. I don't know, do I want to write any C in general, but at least that complexity is totally unnecessary. Without the pipe separated thing, we could use, it would be much simpler to implement parsers, like using the kind of common parser building techniques like Alexas and parsers and so on. So that's something we need to think about, that there would be a lot of benefits in not having the pipe separated format, and then if it's not very widely used, then we may want to drop it. And that was the reason I asked explicitly Mikka to have this question in the survey. Let's move forward here, but if this is something you are interested, especially if you are kind of a big user of the pipe separated format, then this would be a horrible thing for you, let me know.
Yeah, thanks for explanation there. I would still maybe hope to keep those explanations a bit shorter as we are still on a clock here, and there are quite a few questions to go through, but definitely feel free to jump in when you feel like it. So the next question, what are the most relevant libraries for you, whether they are public or self-written libraries? So basically, this work cloud again, so there's like, you can say browser, this database, Selenium, requests, collections. So I think that's probably cut out, but anyway, you can say JSON there, custom string requests, so self-written. So there is a lot of stuff, but I think it's quite clear that the browser there is the biggest one. Are there any specific libraries or tools that you believe require more development or updating?
One question regarding that. This was just an open text question, right? There were no, this year there were no given answers. Okay.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. So open text field with the question there, and then this is a word cloud of the answers in a sense. So that's there. Are there any specific libraries or tools that you believe require more development or updating? Please mention them and possibly describe the kind of improvements or updates you think are needed. So Appium library is there on top. I think it would need some maintenance as well. Database and request library. I think Andrea Moccini did there something with the database library, if I'm not mistaken. So that can be old news, but for a request library, I think there is some update needed still. Selenium versus browser, so both were seen as kind of important, but it was also kind of a little bit, some people were kind of hoping that Selenium library, the handling of dynamic loading web pages was kind of valuable. I actually don't know how that difference, and probably it's not important, but both were seen as worth to maintain. Ramak, robot framework, RabbitQM, RabbitMQ, sorry, other protocol libraries. So this just shows up kind of like how vast the community is and what kind of there is. Tooling and plugins, RPF framework and libraries and desktop applications. I think the RPF framework especially is kind of in a need of splitting up and taking some new maintainers, if I'm not mistaken, taking the best bits, so to say, for the community. Integration and reporting enhancements. I think this is something that hopefully we will be able to do in the future once the new kind of reporting kicks in 7.1. Maintenance and community support. So this is something that well, people just think that libraries should remain up to date with a compatible new robot framework version and dependencies. So that's a real risk with some libraries. Customization and flexibility. So some libraries would need some more customization options, but no kind of hard to say one or two thing about that. But anybody wants to comment on this one, or do we move on?
Yeah. Mikka, I'll take just a real quick comment. I'm taking the lead on pushing forward the Appium library, also the RPA framework. So there are things happening. If you want to hear what's happening, come over to the Slack channel, and I'll take it as an action item to kind of give an update in the next week on those. Also, we're constantly doing the Selenium library and browser library conversations. So that's an ongoing thing, and we're looking at that dynamic loading web pages within the Selenium. And the last one is, we're needing, I need to set a time, but we're meeting within the Market Square, which is kind of the number 8. There's the maintenance and community support is kind of theirs, is doing that. So in general, we're doing that, but in even in a larger sense, the Slack channel is a good spot for people to come out if you're asking for help or wanting to give help for that. So
yeah, definitely.
And
thanks, Ed.
Maybe in the end, when we have some time, you can also, if interest is there, and enlighten about the news there after this meeting. I mean,
I've got a hard stop.
Okay. Let's continue.
So I can go.
Yeah, but there is a short summary, but I think I at least tried to walk it through. Are you in favor of robot framework compared to other tools you have used? Why not? So majority of responses express strong preference of robot framework. This again is probably a little bit of bias as people probably are using a robot framework, or more kind of who answers the survey anyway want to contribute somehow to the community a little bit more. But still, it's open source, extensibility, richness of libraries, ease of use, ability to integrate Python and more complex scenarios, overreadability, quality of reports. So those kind of things that typically come up in these. Then flexibility and versatility, community and ecosystems in general. Some comparison to some other tools were mentioned. I'm not gonna go through here, but you can read this later. I think it should be shared in our Slack channel, if I'm not mistaken, or I will share it within the Open Space channel as well if you want to go through in more detail after this session. As a rule of thumb, 95% were more kind of leaning towards robot framework, 3% were kind of neutral, and 2% were saying like, yeah, I prefer other tools.
which is not very surprisingly if you ask the robot framework users to answer a survey.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's kind of like biased, but it's still gives some answer that at least some people like the tool.
At least the users don't hate it. I think this is also a lot of tools cannot achieve that.
Yeah, if you would totally hate a tool, then it would also take time to answer the survey just to tell that I totally hate this tool. But
yeah, there was the 2%, so I don't know. Participation. So let's move to the next section, more about the community. So if we look at here, I think it's pretty small, but I will try to walk it through. So most people, or let's put it this way, at the forum, there are some people active, so you can say this downward going trend in a way that they are neutral, so haven't used it in the past 6 months, and a little bit more have used it. So going kind of a trend that almost every day few people uses it and most people never. With Slack, it's more about it's a little bit of some people have not used it, some people use it a few times past 6 months, some people use it every day, so it's a little bit more even, and some people once a week or something like this. Mailing list is kind of they're also in a declining slope, and most people have not used it, like vast majority. Stack Overflow is a little bit, we are not officially there as robot framework, but I think it gives some indication like where do people search information on a robot framework. So there's a nice Gaussian figure there, more or less like a bell. Then with LinkedIn, some people are there, quite many not. Facebook, even more people are not there. A few people have seen our posts there. Then a lot of people are using companies' internal channels. So there's like almost every day, which is of course understandable. So probably many people are exchanging knowledge about robot framework internally. And then some people have not used, maybe they are not working in a company or just not, they are only QA person there or whatever reason. And then there are some other channels. I think this is like fairly similar to 2023 in my opinion. So how well are you able to find what you're looking for in the community channels that you use? And here we can say that roughly 20% always finds what they need. Some 54%, so that's like, yeah, most of the time I find what I need. Like 4 out of 5, then 22% with the 3 out of 5. Like, and then a few people either have difficult problems or ask bad questions. And again, quite similar to 2023. How can we improve the community channels, organization and accessibility? So a significant call for more organized resources, including updated tutorials, consolidated communication platforms to make information more accessible and prevent knowledge loss. This is something that we are actually working on as of now to make a little bit better practices in Slack, hopefully also in the forum in the fall, trying to also put more resources there in docs. So under robotframework.org, there's docs resources and so forth. So constantly working with that. Of course, it can always be better. Global inclusivity. So this more about also being present in global regions, enhancing worldwide engagement would be nice. It's up to the people. Really difficult to go to places where we are not. Community engagement. So there are ideas to boost engagement, including forming volunteer teams, just as newcomers, reward for active participation, more frequent online community events. This is something that we are already working on with the ambassador program, so probably rolling out officially next year. And of course, we're always welcoming all community engagement efforts from people. Platform improvements, there are desire to singular official community channel to clear channel names and streamline communication, along with features like tags for topics, reviews, or responses that improve usability. We kind of did close the general channel already in Slack, so there's some movement towards this way. Of course, kind of like we are not going for a singular channel in a way that there are still different channels and even different platforms, but of course that's something we can reconsider later on if there's a strong trend for that need. Content quality, well, I guess there are some duplicate posts and kind of a better content management needed in a Slack, and that's something that we are also working on with our up to be dated Slack policy. So hopefully some of you can also jump in as moderators for some channels in the fall. Let's see. So how do you participate in the community? So 71%. So this is a little bit about who kind of consumes information, who helps others, who shares information, who creates information. Of course, all of these are very welcome, but these are also a little bit of indications of if nobody's helping out others, then we are not in a good shape. But luckily, if you look at this, so of course, most people do use one of the community forums. A lot of people ask help there, like 46%. A lot of people have help one another, so 30% roughly, or 1/3. Some 15% write scripts, execute scripts somebody else has written. It's of course a little bit higher, like 25%. Review auto results from robot framework execution, so results that somebody else has done. So just review stuff, like 13%. I write or contribute to private libraries. I think this is quite high, 20%, which is probably also reflecting that the more core people in the community have answered the survey. I write or contribute to public libraries, 13% there. I give feedback to library maintainers, roughly 20%. I write or contribute to Robot Framework core. That's 5 people and 3%. Hooray! Good for you. Let's hope to increase that a little bit for future. I do not participate in the community, roughly 18%. And now there are some other singular things people have written in an open text box. So I think that gives some indication again of health of the community, and I think the results are fairly similar to last year. Then a little bit about kind of using robot framework. So if you have stopped using it for a significant amount of time, why? Project or role changes, so kind of switching projects. Of course, sometimes you just have to take what the customer says. Organizational decisions, personal reasons like sick leaves and so forth, technologically fit and preference. So some find challenges with robot framework syntax, not favorable for all team members, more manual testing, and yeah, things happen. External influences. Yeah, so some things that are kind of hindering people. But for those who contribute, then it's also important to kind of know what enables then. So community and atmosphere, friendly, supportive. That's number one thing. Then learning and feedback. So people, of course, want to learn while helping others. They want to get feedback as well. Clear opportunities and guidance. So there are people needing a little bit more guidance there. Recognition and appreciation, events and personal engagement, self-motivation, external support, team dynamics, technology and innovation. So these are some of the things that kind of help to contribute and how we could kind of increase the contribution within the community to focus on these things. Again, it's quite many things, but I think we are quite good in some of them. Some we could do a lot better. So if you haven't contributed, what is preventing you from contributing? Uncertainty or knowledge gaps, lack of time, professional identity or experience. So they feel they're not real developers, so they cannot contribute, which can be a thing, of course. Company policies and working environments, so not all companies allow Slack or kind of this open source tools, even self-doubt or fear, engagement and awareness. So they don't know how to help. Any questions on the community part of the survey? Do you want to say something before moving to the next section?
Let's go ahead and move on. I'm good.
Okay. So then a little bit about the foundation. So this is a set of questions to try to see if people know what we are doing with Robot Framework Foundation. So we do support the core, we do support ecosystem projects, we do support community platforms, we do support or we do organize Robot Framework conferences. We do not really answer Robot Framework related questions in community, but of course we support as answering of those. So in a way we host a community and we encourage people to do so. The foundation is a democratic by its members, but foundation does not sell consultancy. So you can kind of spot from this last one, which is not true at all, that 12% roughly of the respondees do not know at all what the foundation is doing. And that's kind of an indicative question to see. So it's roughly same than last year. So you could say that we are still working on being more known in the community. If your company is a Robot Framework, is your company a Robot Framework member? So here we can see that roughly 30% represent member companies, which is a slightly bit boring. Is that roughly like 9% do not know if they are, and yeah, I would hope that all member companies know, or all people know whether their companies are members or not. Then I asked a little bit about joining the foundation, so let's skip that for now. So then more about the foundation. Would you recommend other companies to join? And here we can see, just a moment. So here we can see a slight drop in the NPS, which is a kind of factor of how many people recommend versus how many people are saying that do not join or do not recommend joining. So NPS of 37 is definitely good, but it's not as good as 76. Then again, we have almost 3 times as many responses this year. So it can also be that a kind of amount of people answering gives a little bit better understanding of what's the reality. And it can also be that we don't actually have a way to confirm if these people answering are foundation members or not. So there can also be some people who do not know what they are talking about. But regardless, it's a good survey result, but I would hope to see the trend again next year and hope that it's not declining in a linear way, because then we start to be worried.
And I think there's another thing in here that can also talk to this, is the fact of, what do people know what the foundation does? And so I think the number of respondents there, 45, which is, a third of all the respondents this year. I would just take in the back of my head that probably, and I don't remember what the answer to the question, is your company a member of the foundation or not? I would suspect that we have here a lot more people answering that aren't in a foundation company as well. And so that answer I would not take as, don't join. It's more I'm not sure what the benefits of joining are. And I think so this is just helpful for us in terms of kind of talking about Robot Framework, talking about the Robot Framework Foundation, what are the work we're doing type of thing. So that decrease in the NPS, to me, I'd rather see 45 responses and a decrease in the NPS than a decrease in responses and the same NPS. So yeah, this is a positive to me.
I fully agree with that, and I'm not worried about that at all. Just kind of it's hard to sometimes know what's behind these things because this is an anonymous survey anyway, and even it's like this one person here tracking it down or 3 person here, so it's like we are really talking about very few people, regardless. But yeah, let's move on. Thanks, Ed, for the comment. So how strong?
Quick question. Is there a way, you said it was anonymous, but is there a way that you can correlate the 2 questions, like are you a member and this one?
Yeah, so that is actually asked. So there is a path that if you answer yes, then you are being asked about more about the foundation. If you are not, then you are asked if you want to join. So it is split. So technically, everybody who answered no are not being asked this question and should be included by the survey. But of course, like you can still answer yes and then take the survey. But because it's hard to verify that. Let's put it this way: that if they answer it correctly in the yes or no initially. Okay. Anyway, thanks, Kida. So how strongly do you agree or disagree about the following statement about Robot Framework Foundation? So most people agree that their role is being performed well, and some people or quite many people agree strongly. Then it should use more resources towards international expansion. It's a little bit more like neutral there. Some people agree, some disagree, some do not know. If the foundation should use more resources for the core development, there is kind of a quite strong agreement there, but a lot of people are neutral as well. So more neutral, kind of neutral / agreeing that yes, we should use.
Could you answer multiple of those?
No.
Only one.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, but then you see like so not answering is neutral, or I mean
no, there is unsure for kind of like being more like I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, but all these answers are given parallel, so you can say
Correct.
Use more resources for core, use more resources for community, and use more resources for ecosystem.
Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood. So these are separate questions in the sense that you can answer to all of this. Yes, use more resources to tease.
So we don't know if those people who have not said use more resources on core has said use more resources on ecosystem. So there is no kind of okay.
Correct. So they are individual questions in a sense. Moving on. So the foundation should use more resources for ecosystem development. There's quite strong agreement here, or agreement here. A lot of people are also neutral, but more towards kind of agreeing that we should. And then using more resources for community development. Really strong neutral. Some people agreeing, a little bit more agreeable, I would say. And then a question whether the foundation is well positioned for long-term support of the project. Some people think kind of neutrally. Some answer. Most people agree. Quite many people also strongly agree. I think this is a question we can a little bit also compare there with the previous year. So there was a more strong agreement for this last year. But again, this was way few more people answering, so you don't necessarily have to take anything from that, but just as a maybe more people will bring more diversity.
But that seems to also from this year's the answer seems to agree that spending money for core and ecosystem development is not a bad idea. So there are very few people disagreeing.
Correct. So
the question was more resources. Maybe they disagree and say, yeah, we spend enough there, but there is no like group forming. They said, no, don't sponsor ecosystem projects, for example.
Correct. I would actually expect that most people do not know how much we use currently or how do we currently support this. So they are answering neutral because they don't know the facts. That is my assumption underlying there. But needless to say, that's the end of the survey. We're planning, I noticed on now 1.5 hour slots, but we actually typically have 1 hour slot unless there's something special. So I would also ask for a final round of questions or comments, if any, and then end the official part of the community survey results.
Yeah, I think you can
Going
say
once,
bye and stop the
twice,
YouTube.
going thrice. Okay, thank you everybody for attending today. So this was a walkthrough of the community survey results. You can also find the results in Slack in more detail under the Open Space channel. So check it out there if you want. You can also ask me, Mikka Solmater, in Slack for more details, or we can engage in a conversation there if needed. Okay, have a pleasant day, everybody. The official part is going out now.
And if you want to learn more about the Robot Framer Foundation, go to the link in the description or make a subscribe on this YouTube channel and see more videos coming up here. Bye-bye.
Did you end the video recording?